Surely the presence, right here with us, in our seats, breathing us. So take this moment now of meditation. If there's any thoughts or things that are on your mind, just let them go. Take a breath in. And let go with a sigh. Maybe do that one more time. And take a notice of your body. Is there anything that needs a little extra attention? Send some of that loving energy, that healing breath to that spot. And allow your breath to just breathe you easily, naturally. And in these next moments, if something arises, you can come back to the breath. Or just say quietly to yourself, I see clearly. For the rain is gone. I see all the obstacles that used to be in my way. I see clearly. 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 So today, and for the rest of the week, as you encounter people, see them clearly. See them as the children of God that they are. Be grateful. Find that space and be amazed at what comes back to greet you. I see clearly. Namaste. Today we're noticing the season. If we could just paint with the colors of the season, be painting with the color of the wind. Thank you for that. So today, I thought it would be fun to look around at the seasons. And as I look out on the face of people here, I'm reminded that we're so lucky here in Prescott. Not true of much of the Southwest, but we get 4 seasons here in Prescott. And I think fall might be my favorite, personally. But it's always gets a little warm in the summertime, but I can always go down to Phoenix and remind myself how lucky I am at 5,000 feet. But it's been unusually fine this fall, I think. We had some nice rain, We've been having cool mornings, and the fire maple are out there shining and talking with their colors. Of course, the only downside is that the days are getting a little shorter. And last night, the rest of the United States changed their clocks, and we didn't have to. So today, November 2nd, is an auspicious day. I think every day is auspicious, but today some celebrate Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. The whole weekend has been special, right? Friday, Halloween. Yesterday, All Souls Day or All Saints Day. And we come to these days because a long time ago, they celebrated the cross-quarter days. These are the days that are halfway between the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice. So we're halfway through fall now. And the Celts were the ones that first celebrated this thousands of years ago. There where Ireland, Great Britain, parts of France are today. And they thought that the veil between the physical world and the spiritual world became very thin at this time of the year. So they dressed in masks, not to go out trick-or-treating, but they thought that they could hide from the spirits by not looking like who they were. And so some of these traditions obviously have continued today, and people get to get dressed up. I got dressed up on Thursday instead of Friday. Oh, I was a priest. I had a devil on one side and an angel on the other. It's the conundrum of humanity, right? But on Dia de los Muertos, families celebrate those loved ones that they've lost. Maybe even go to the graveyard and have a picnic. And these stories and rituals that have been handed down to us are still alive in us today. And we remember them. We may not remember Cross-Quarter Day. It's called Samhain, but it's pronounced, it looks like Samhain. But they, of course, didn't speak English. But we might have been a little closer to the earth back then when the Celts were celebrating this. And so they would celebrate the farming. This would be maybe the second harvest. They would have livestock. And so the seasons were important because it helped them know when they would do various parts of their chores, when they should clear the earth, when they should plant, when they should sow, reap. And we don't always keep as much track of it today as we used to. But luckily we have these rituals. And if we were to celebrate the Day of the Dead, we might say, today, as we gather on this Day of the Dead, we come together to cherish the memories of our loved ones who have journeyed beyond this world. And we hold dear the recollections of their laughter, the warmth of their love, and the radiant light they brought into our lives. I think all of us have our ancestors to remember, those that have gone before us, forging the road. And so how fitting for the season of this year, and of course the seasons within our lives, they're not always aligned. You know, I can be in fall physically, and maybe there's a stormy winter inside. Or I'm in the amidst of something cold, and yet I'm feeling joyous and summer-like. So they can move faster than the outer seasons, but they can help define who we are and what we are. Now, in 1959, a clever fellow named Pete Seeger added some lines to a verse in Ecclesiastes. He added, turn, turn, turn. And now we all know it. The Byrds made it famous in 1965. That'll be 60 years ago in December. So, to everything, there is a season. Turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. So to put this in context, we need to really look at the first and second chapters of Ecclesiastes to try and see, well, where does this poem come from? what seems like a poem. Because in Ecclesiastes, there's a teacher and a narrator and speaking to the people. So you have sort of three levels going on. It's a complicated story. And the teacher is sometimes thought to be King Solomon, but certainly someone left over from David. And we learn that they're wealthy in later chapters. But at the beginning, he looks at the human condition and says, vanity, vanity, or some translations say meaningless, meaningless. And it's the meaning that we give to the physical, psychological, and spiritual world that has us decide whether it's vanity, this human condition, whether it's meaningful or meaningless. But the teacher begins by pointing out both the challenges and the joys of being human. We sang this morning, it's a wonderful day. And he noted that the works of God are amazing, from the small to the mighty large. However, we have to notice it. We have to be aware of it. We have to point it out to ourselves sometimes. Oh, look at that beautiful tree. He says, all is vanity. What profit has a man of all his labor which he gives unto the sun? One generation passes away and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. So we can think of ourselves as being just here for a short time. Recently there was a woman, I think she was the oldest woman, 120 years old. And she said, study me, because even 120 years is like a mayfly to the mountain mother. So the teacher says that the worldly efforts are without meaning unless we give them meaning. Charles Fillmore taught that it is the meaning we as individuals place on our activities. The things themselves are like the dash found on gravestones, 1935 dash 2025. But what came of that dash? Whole lifetime in that dash. Each individual action may seem small, but you add them all up and it makes a lifetime. Fillmore gave hope with the nugget, it is our thoughts that give color, tone, shape, character to all creation. So it is our thoughts that give the shape and color. Because with our thoughts, they inevitably lead to action, creativity, interaction, and relationships. And these become the meaning in our lives. And we see them through our relationships, through the way we interact. Now, one person may think of it as toil and drudgery. Another may think, wow, this is a great deal. If your job is toil and drudgery, I suggest getting a new one. But maybe it's not necessary. Remember the story of the stonemason laying the foundation? And he says, oh, no, I'm not just a stonemason. I am laying the foundation for a cathedral that my son's son may one day see. So you have to have a long view. And in that view, you're not just hourly saying, when are they going to let us off? I'm tired of this stonework. But instead saying, I can imagine something great being built here. So there was a Sufi poet named Kabir. Robert Bly brought him into English. And he says, what we speak becomes the house we live in. What we speak becomes the house we live in. Who will want to sleep in your bed if the roof leaks right above it? I always liked him because he had a sense of humor. But it shows you we have jobs to do in creating our homes, and we have to do the work to maintain them and shine them up, keep them going. So our thoughts and our speech becomes the substance of life. Speak ill, and the world appears cramped, distorted, even dangerous. Speak with affection, practice compassionate communication, and see how everything changes. Suddenly people are friendlier. They're nicer to you. So life can be heaven or hell right here on earth, depending on how we perceive it. There are masters such as Erich Fromm, Nelson Mandela. They were imprisoned for years, and yet they were somehow able to find the meaning through their internal search, even forgiving their captors. Now that is teaching. In James 2:18, he says that I, by my works, will show you my faith. So the way I show up, by that which I do, I'm carving my place in the world. And it all begins with our thinking, our speech, our appreciation of everything around us. God's handiwork all around. And this is the fundamental seasonality of life. So now we're ready to go back to Ecclesiastes 3, because to everything there is a season, and a time to every person purpose under heaven. If I sow discord, belittle those around me, my harvest reflects it. This is the law of cause and effect. Some people call it karma. 2 Corinthians says, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Because to everything there is a season. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to reap. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down. A time to build up. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, and of course a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war, a time of peace. Turn, turn, turn. And that was written years ago, and it's so true today. And the seasons, they go round and round, like that carousel with the painted ponies, up and down. The meaning of life and the making of life is ours to do. And it's also one of the great mysteries of life. What is the purpose? What is my purpose? Because there is a season, a time to weep, a time to mourn. And at any moment we can experience something unexpected. An accident, a diagnosis, a loved one in pain. This can be a time to weep, a time to mourn. But how long should we grieve? That is something for each person. But we know from Kubler-Ross that it could be a time to bargain, a time to rage in anger, a time to hold on, and finally a time to let go. Because there's a season. But the seasons don't offer a warning. Now we know that winter's coming, but we're holding off the cold for a little bit longer. But in our inner seasons, we aren't always given a warning. We might be. Oh, should I do something about that cough? Do I heed the call? Or do I continue on magically thinking that it might be unimportant? I'll attend to it later. I don't really need to go see the doctor. There is a season. A time to break down, a time to build up. And this seasonal shifting can be amplified in our close relationships because they provide a mirror to us that we can't hide from. You've seen the things that maybe taking something for granted, failing to be appreciative of the small things. And you hear the story all the time of, well, we simply grew apart. But friendships, like plants, require tending. And you must remember to weed out the frustrations that could grow. They could grow into a jungle of regret or a forest of distrust. I have to remind myself to embrace my family and friends. Send them a note. Write a card. Jump on Zoom. But I still like receiving and giving cards. I have one of those frames with pictures. And so I have my little granddaughter, Cedar Grace, from little baby to, yes, Friday, she was a rainbow unicorn with her frilly dress, little rainbow horn. She was having fun. And there is a season. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. So sometimes we have to speak up. We have to speak up for ourselves. We have to say, hey, enough of that. I'm not going to take it anymore. But we have to go into the silence to get clear about our part so that we don't just speak out in some reactive way and then later say, can I take those words back? You can't. And the pace today is so fast. And yet the seasonal flow continues. I practice meditation to try and get clear about what is mine to say. You heard the 3 Sufi gates to decide whether to say something. You say, is it mine to say? Will they be able to hear it? How should I say it to be able to be heard? If you don't pass the Sufi gates, get clear before you come back with your words. Sometimes it feels like there is no one to hear my speech. When we want to speak and be heard, gather around you your trusted friends or talk to a prayer chaplain. What a great deal we have. Because there is a season, a time to laugh and a time to dance. They're not all filled with pain. We have to celebrate the times that we've enjoyed, the triumphs we've had, the things we've completed. I looked back at the previous quarter. They said we just finished Q3. And I looked back and said, wow, I got a lot accomplished. I should be happy with that. I got a bunch of things off my plate. It's a funny thing, off my plate. As though it's something I should just get rid of. But I should celebrate those things that are now off my plate because they were accomplishments. There's something good. Laugh and dance. Take myself out for dinner. The teacher in Ecclesiastes boasted of all that he had and all that he had built, the riches, the food, and the harem. In the end, these things were merely things. It did not fill him. So there's a season for every purpose under heaven. And all we have to do is turn in our lives to enjoy those seasons. Matthew 12 says, "Here is my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved, with whom my soul is well pleased." Be pleased with yourself. Find that season and turn to your life. Create the life that you want. That is your purpose. Thank you.